Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where in the world you are. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this webinar focusing on engaging early career ocean professionals in the UN Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. So this webinar is hosted by the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, the ECOP, the Early Career Ocean Professionals Informal Working Group, and the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs of the UK government. I am Dr. Sian Henley from the University of Edinburgh, where I'm a lecturer in marine science. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Southern Ocean Observing System, and I sit on the Southern Ocean Task Force for the UN Ocean Decade. So it's a great pleasure to moderate this webinar today, and we have a fantastic lineup of speakers and excellent attendance from across the global ocean community. So you're very welcome. I want to start by highlighting that this webinar and all the activities within the UN Decade and the ECOP programme have a strong focus on prioritising creating an inclusive space where diversity is recognised as a core strength and all voices are heard and respected in an open and equitable manner. So I encourage active participation from all of you, both in the webinar and in the UN Decade and ECOP activities in general, so that we can make these invigorating, inspiring, and empowering experiences for us all. So with that said, it's my pleasure to hand over to our first speaker to welcome us. So I hand over to Alison Clausen from the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. Alison is the programme specialist at the Marine Policy and Regional Coordination section of the IOC. She has over 20 years of professional experience in project development and management within marine policy, conservation and climate change. And Alison is very much playing a lead role in the implementation of the Ocean Decade. So Alison, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sian, and it's a huge pleasure to be here today. So it's my great honour to welcome you all to this webinar, which I think is a really, really important occasion for early career ocean professionals and those who want to support early career ocean professionals to come together in the context of the Ocean Decade and really spark collaboration and synergies and partnerships. I would like to start out by very much thanking DEFRA for their support in their role as leaders and presidents of the G7. Without you, we couldn't have pulled this together. So thank you very much. And also to pass along the apologies of the Executive Secretary of the IOC of UNESCO, Vladimir Rybinin, who is not able to be here because we have a governing bodies meeting, but I believe he has recorded a special message for the end of the event. So I just have a couple of minutes and a few points that I'd like to raise about the Ocean Decade, things perhaps to keep in mind as we're going through the webinar. The Ocean Decade was born in 2017 out of a global recognition that if we're going to achieve sustainable development, we need more ocean knowledge. And that's not just to manage the ocean, it's also in terms of food security, climate action, in terms of resilient cities. There are so many elements of sustainable development that require ocean knowledge. So the UN General Assembly proclaimed the Ocean Decade in 2017. The Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO that I work for was very honoured to be asked to lead the preparation process of the Ocean Decade. So between 2017 and 2020, and I know many of you were engaged, we had thousands of stakeholders around the world helping us define what a decade of ocean science for sustainable development could and should look like. And this resulted in the implementation plan, which is really the guiding document, the framework of the Ocean Decade. If you haven't seen that, I really suggest having a look at it. There's a very nice summary version that really sets out very succinctly how we're going to achieve the vision of the Ocean Decade, which is the science we need for the ocean we want, as well as an action framework. And I really want to focus on that because I would really like you to keep in mind that the decade is a framework, it's a tool, it's a mechanism, it's for you all to use as you want to and as you need to contribute to better management of the ocean, to contribute to increased ocean knowledge. And so the implementation plan sets out the way in which stakeholders are going to come together around the world to identify, to create, to implement, to resource decade actions, and how these are going to lead to the fulfillment of 10 major ocean decade challenges and thus contribute to sustainable development, whether it be through the 2030 agenda or through national or regional policy imperatives. Now, the Ocean Decade has been underway for a year already, hard to believe, but we're just a year old in terms of the implementation. We already have 161 decade actions, including 13 major global research programs, a huge number of projects and other activities that are contributing to the global aim of the Ocean Decade. And of course, the Early Career Ocean Professional Program is a key part of this overall ecosystem of decade actions. It's one of the flagship programs. It was one of the first to be endorsed. And at IOC, we're really honored to be able to accompany the ECOP program as it rolls out and as it develops. There are groups, there are now early career ocean professional groups that are appearing and being created on the Global Stakeholder Forum. And I know you'll hear more about those, and I encourage you all to join. But we're, as I said, the early career ocean professionals for us as a program, as a group, as a stakeholder group within the decade are really essential. And we really look forward to continue working with you over the next 9 years, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the legacy or one of the legacies of the decade that the early career ocean professionals, many of you are going to have, significantly advanced in your careers over the next 10 years and will be the torch bearers of ocean science into the next decade. So I wish you all a wonderful webinar. I'm really interested to hear some of the discussions. Thank you all for being here. Thank you again to DEFRA for making this possible. And with that, I'll hand back to Sian.
Thanks very much, Alison, for a really informative and inspiring start to our webinar. So thank you. Our next speaker is Professor Gideon Henderson, who is the Chief Scientific Advisor at DEFRA, the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, where he's been since 2019. So Gideon is a Professor of Earth Sciences at the Department of Earth Sciences in the University of Oxford since 2006. And Gideon also won the 30th Annual Plymouth Marine Science Medal in 2016 and is a Fellow of the Royal Society. Gideon, over to you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, Sian, and for the introduction. And thank you, Alison, for that wonderful introduction to the programme that we're here to talk about today. And welcome to what a very large number of people on the call. So it's very nice to see so many people here. So I am the Chief Scientific Advisor at DEFRA, which has a very broad remit, which includes marine and includes the ocean from a UK government perspective. But I'm also by background an ocean scientist, and that's where I come to this conversation from, perhaps more even than my government role. I was asked to speak for a few minutes about both my career trajectory and how I got interested in the ocean and got to where I am, and then also a little bit about the importance of early career researchers in the process of delivering ocean science, and in fact all science. Now those would be quite dry subjects, both of them, if I tackled them just as they stand, and certainly no one wants to hear a detailed 10-minute biography of my career. But what I thought I would do is frame it in the context of a program that I've been very heavily involved in for more than a decade, an ocean science program. And I'm going to use the example of the GeoTraces program. Some people will know that program, others may not. It's a big international program of marine chemistry, trying to understand the role of the oceans and ocean chemistry in fisheries, in climate, in pollution, and much more. And I'm going to tell you the history of that program, because I was involved in it since the very early stages when it was just an idea until it's became a really fully fledged program, and talk a little bit about what makes a good program work and the importance of early career researchers in that process. So if you start from the beginning of the GeoTraces program, it started by a bunch of scientists of a wide range of ages, from very senior professionals to graduate students, identifying that there was a problem and a lack of knowledge. Just the sort of situation we're in now with some areas of the UN Decade Challenge, identifying problems and working out what we need to do to fill the knowledge gap. And in this situation, we recognized that ocean chemistry was lagging behind other bits of ocean science, and was increasingly recognized to be important. And I can take one example, which is we knew by then that iron, the metal iron, was a really important nutrient in the ocean. It enabled life in the ocean, but we didn't really know very much about how iron even looked in the ocean, its concentration, let alone how it was controlled and how it was cycled. And that's just one of a number of chemical challenges that we identified as particular problems. If we were going to understand and fill that knowledge gap, we recognized that we would have to work very internationally if we were going to do it. Because the ocean is big, you can't tackle it with one country working alone in something that challenging. So we were going to have to build an international coordinated program to tackle that. That involved working with international organizations. We worked a lot with a UN body, SCORE, but the UN Decade gives a platform for that sort of work, which will really enhance what we can do in the next decade with other programs and other scientific endeavors. What was really important in GeoTraces early on was clarity about the mission, the vision of what we were trying to do, working out what we were going to do and also what we were not going to do with that scientific program. So we knew what we were trying to achieve, and getting scientists, young and old, and across the world to buy into that vision and share it and own it so that we could take it forward. And that's a critical aspect here. But getting people to work together will enable you to achieve things, and it'll enable you to have a shared endeavor if you all know what the benefits are and what the mission is. And the benefits were important to identify. We had to recognize the importance of chemistry for life in the oceans, the importance of chemistry for understanding the role of the carbon cycle and global change and climate change, and the impact of chemical pollution in the ocean, all of things which society cares about very deeply. Some of the other things that we had to think about from a GeoTraces point of view, once we had established the international endeavor and the mission, was how do we solve the analytical challenge? It's hard to make these measurements, and we recognized that we would have to capacity build and capacity share across the world, and we would have to train up new people. We'd have to get young researchers and early career researchers into this endeavor so that they helped to develop the skills. They learned the skills and they helped then to drive the program forward into the future. And without that involvement and that engagement of early career researchers, we simply would not have been able to achieve the program, and it would not have had the legacy that GeoTraces now has going into the future. We also had to recognize the need for common standards and sharing, for instance, information about how the quality of the data need to be assured and how data access, so that the data was shared adequately and high quality data sets were released to everyone to use. And that sort of process of team building with shared understanding of what the commitments that you're making are is also really important to any international programs such as those which are already developing in the UN Decade. And then you have to think about what you're going to do to communicate the findings of your research, the findings of your science. And again, this is absolutely fundamental to the success, not just have the shared vision and understand the shared responsibilities, but also understand how you communicate it and how you need and who you need to communicate it to the key stakeholders. So to those in the fisheries industries for GeoTraces, to those are worried about pollution, to governments, to other scientists, to those thinking about climate, and to broader society and everyone who's interested in the ocean and the future of the ocean. And again, in that communication process, you would fail if you didn't involve people at all different career stages, including very explicitly those at an early career stage who need to talk to their communities, both scientific communities and much more broadly across their country and with the stakeholders they interact with. So it's through some of those key processes that I think GeoTraces has been successful and is a good example to use as a model for some of the things you might think about throwing your weight behind within the UN decade. Identifying a problem clearly, giving it boundaries, working out what it is that you are not trying to solve as well as what you are trying to solve, sharing a mission and building a team around that mission, a team that must involve early career researchers and therefore I hope will involve many of you in the UN decade as we go forward. Agreeing the terms, including things like the quality control and the data sharing so that you all know where you're going, and know how to communicate and making sure that all different career stages and stakeholders are engaged in that communication process. And it's through that series of activities that I think you can get involved in many programs in the UN decade. There's so much knowledge still to gain about the ocean, so much understanding to get if we're going to end up with the ocean science that we really need to get the ocean that we want in the future and to protect this very precious resource into the future. So I will leave my remarks there, except for to say, I wish I was in your shoes and with the decade coming and the prospect of throwing myself into some new ocean science to gain new knowledge and help us understand the ocean better. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Gideon. I always think the downside of these Zoom webinars is that you can't hear the rapturous applause that I'm sure is erupting across the global ocean community. So thank you for that call to action and some really inspiring words about what can be achieved using other examples to guide the way. So thank you very much. So just a quick procedural note that we'll be having a discussion later on in which there'll be an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. So if there are questions that you would like to ask, feel free to use the chat function or the Q&A as you prefer. And so you can get your thinking caps on about some of the questions that you would like to ask, in addition to those that were submitted ahead of the webinar. So something to think about whilst we hear from the following speakers. So on that note, it's my pleasure now to hand over to Evgenia Konstianaya, who is the Programme Global Coordinator for ECOP. She's a consultant at the IOC. She's responsible for scoping and development of the entire ECOP programme, so very much leading this initiative. Where she is charged with building strategic relationships with other programs and initiatives and agencies in order to empower early career ocean professionals around the world. She also has lots of research interests around ocean sustainability, marine pollution, and the impact of climate change on coastal systems. And she's the focal point of the International Ocean Institute for Moscow, Russia, as well as a Black Sea Young Ambassador representing Russia. So lots of credentials. We're very glad to have you here, Evgenia. Over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Sean, for this introduction. I'm really honored to be presenting today for you to be speaking at this event. It's great to see that there are so many people joining us today. And I do hope that this will spark some really important discussions and it will be very beneficial for all the ECOPs joining today. So I will be presenting global work and engagement opportunities for our ECOP program. Next slide, please. So our program was endorsed last year. We were endorsed as a network program, and our vision is to strengthen the voices and the diverse perspectives of new generations of ocean researchers, and to make sure that the knowledge is transferred between experienced ocean professionals and early career ocean professionals. So we will be achieving that by empowering ECOPS with meaningful networking opportunities and professional development opportunities, and to make sure that there are ways to connect for ECOPS with each other on a global level, on a regional level, as well as to connect with many other various stakeholders, not only academic sources, but also outside of academia, all within the framework of the UN Ocean Decade, making sure that this legacy really stays beyond the UN Ocean Decade. Next slide, please. So I want to be clear from the beginning of about the definition of an ECOP, early career ocean professional. So for the purpose of our program, an ECOP is someone who identifies as being early in their career, so within 10 years or less in their professional work experience. And this is within any field within any field related to the ocean, and not only talking about paid positions or employed positions. And the term professional is used to refer to anything related to the ocean field. So this is a strong difference from probably other ECOP definitions that are out there that are used in other countries or regions, and we deliberately did that so that we are not talking about this age limit, which is normally 35 years old, so that we are expanding our pool of ECOPs of people who are passionate about the ocean and who would like to contribute to ocean protection, as well to various activities within the UN Ocean Decade. Next slide, please. So we are very grateful to our main supporters, and that is the IOC, UNESCO. As Alison said, the IOC have been supporting us from the very beginning, from the inception of this idea for an ECOP global movement. Quite some time ago, in May 2019, at the first global planning meeting for the UN Ocean Decade in Copenhagen. And since then, they have been, our greatest supporter, and we're also grateful for the financial support from the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation. So on the right, you see a list of our other partners, and this list is not exhaustive. We are continuing to develop our partnerships, and these partnerships are going to be crystallized within the course of 2022. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of our structure. So we have 4 topics that we are working on. These are overarching topics. They are across regions. They're working on a global scale. These are our groups that work on ocean literacy, training and mentoring, diversity, equity and inclusivity, and also ocean bridges. We also have 3 so-called nodes. So these are basically consultants working for Asia, Africa, and Canada, who are working on making an inventory of ECOPs and ECOP-related initiatives and programs, and also ocean-related programs in these respective regions, or Canada in this case. And we also have 3 endorsed projects that we got onto our program from the first call for Decade Actions in 2021. Next slide, please. So what are our priorities? We realized that capacity development is one of the most priorities for ECOPs, because sometimes ECOPs do not have access to training courses. They don't have enough funding to go to a training course, or their institution doesn't have that funding. They sometimes cannot find a good training or necessary training that would allow them to make the next step in their career. And sometimes a good training course, a good, even, a 1-week course is what it takes to get your career to a whole new level. So because we are endorsed as a network program, we are in this unique position to be connected to all the UN Ocean Decade actions, projects, programs, contributions, and we want to see what is out there and what is missing. So one point I would like to make clear is that we are not going to replace an existing initiative. We are not going to go to some region and replace everything that's happening there. We are not going to do that. We want to see what is happening and make a database so that ECOPS have an easy access to all those opportunities, including funding opportunities. And then we want to see what is missing, either globally or on a regional level, and see what trainings are missing, what capacity development needs these regions are having. So in order to address that, we'll be also co-leading community of practice, which is one of the items, one of the pillars of the infrastructure of the Iron Ocean Decade. This community of practice will focus on capacity development, and we'll be leading that with 3 other Iron Ocean Decade actions. In 2022, we'll be also coming with a set of webinars, workshops that we will cover some of the gaps that we have identified. So, for example, we have identified that science communication is something that ECOPS would like to hear about more, so more trainings should be provided in that regard. Also, this connection to many other stakeholders would be very beneficial. Exploring the connection with industry, exploring the connection with businesses and various startups and IT companies. Sometimes ECOPS are people who are really passionate about the ocean, but maybe they don't want to work in academia. They don't see any other way to contribute to the ocean. But there are many other opportunities. So we want also to explore that aspect, and actually to talk about that and to show where you can work, how you can contribute to ocean protection and to the Ocean Decade. So very close to that is our development of our regional dimension. So currently, as I said, there are people working on Africa, Asia, and Canada, and you'll be hearing their presentation after my talk. So at the same time, in the coming months, we'll be also developing our nodes in the Caribbean and in the Pacific regions. So if you're someone from these regions, you will be able to reach out to us. I'll share the details with you later. If you want to contribute to the development of our regional dimensions in these regions, please reach out to us. We'll be happy to hear from you and work with you in this direction. So what is it that we want from our regional node, from our regional work? We want to see who are ECOPS, how many are there? Maybe some country does not have an ECOP network or many opportunities for ECOPS. We need to see that. We need to identify these needs. What are capacity development needs? What are trainings that exist so that we can put up all that in one place, so that people from this country or region can have access to all this information. Can you please go to the next slide? So along with that work, we also, as I said, have these 4 topics that we work on. So this is ocean literacy. This is empowering citizens to care about the ocean, to increase their ocean awareness. Our ocean literacy team just finished art contests. They had 3 art contests, actually, 1 global one, 2 regional ones, and we are going to announce the winners in the coming weeks. Then we have diversity, equity, and inclusivity. They will make sure that underrepresented groups will be included in conversations in Ocean Decade processes. They will start very actively with their activities this year. And they will need to communicate why this is needed, what are the best practices for diversity, equity, and inclusivity of various generations into the ocean processes. Then we have training and mentoring and ocean bridges. So these are the 2 teams that are most closely related to capacity development. Ocean bridges aims to bridge research, innovation, diversity, across various experts and stakeholders. And this is our joint work with Geo Blue Planet and Ocean Visions. They will work along a list of marine challenges, and their first focus will be on marine litter. So again, you can find more details and more information about all of that on our website, and I'll share the details with you later. But if you want to join any of these task teams, please feel free to do so. They're all very welcoming new members, especially our capacity development dimension training and mentoring team is very waiting for new members to join them. Could you please move to the next slide? So again, these are the 3 projects that got endorsed under the first call for decade actions. And you can see even from the names of these projects that they are all about capacity development. And it doesn't matter from which region they are. So either it is Asia, floating universities, initiative from Russian universities, and Cabo Verde, so African countries. It doesn't matter, but they are all about capacity development. So it means that capacity development is really one of the priorities that ECOPS need right now. So we are looking forward to receiving applications for projects under our program from the second call for decade actions. The deadline is the 31st of January, as you know. So we are looking forward to receiving those projects that want to be endorsed under our program, and we are very much excited to be working with them in the future. Next slide, please. So thanks to the tremendous support of the financial support of the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, we managed to launch 2 funding calls last year, like late last year in autumn. So these are our very first funding calls as an officially endorsed ECOP program. So the first call was about covering participation fees and conferences and various training events. And the second call was to provide financial support for legal entities such as NGOs, institutions, to provide trainings for ECOPS. So in both cases, the target audience was a certain area. So they were ECOPS from Africa, Caribbean Seas, and Pacific Seas. And the calls are now closed, and we are going to announce the details for these trainings in the coming weeks. So if you're someone, an ECOP from these regions, Africa, Caribbean Seas, Pacific Seas, please follow us on social media. Don't miss out these opportunities, because their participation is free for you and they are virtual. So you can participate in these trainings from the comfort of your house. You don't have to go anywhere. And we believe that this will be a great opportunity to enhance your skills, to gain new knowledge from very renowned organizations, experts in their fields. So you don't want to miss this opportunity. So having said that, we hope that we will have also other or similar funding calls later this year. So stay tuned, don't miss out these opportunities. Next slide, please. So one of the biggest achievements of last year was the launch of our website. Now we have our own website for ECOPS, for all of you out here. This is ecopdk.org. Please go there, check it out. We have a lot of information out there. We are going to continuously expand it, develop. I think one of the most exciting sections for you as the opportunity section that we will develop and fill with various information on events, on jobs, internships, and funding opportunities. We also have a newsletter. We'll start with that in a few weeks. So please sign up for that and really check it out. There's a lot of interesting information out there. Next slide, please. Also, you probably have already heard about the Global Stakeholder Forum. This is the place for the UN Ocean Decade. This is a great place for networking, for getting new information, about events, the latest developments about the UN Ocean Decade. If you're going to apply for the second call for decade action, it's all there. But apart from that, we also have a place there. We have a public group on ECOPS. You don't have to be associated with the ECOP program to be a member of that group, or you don't have to even be an ECOP. So if you just want to publish any information about ECOPs, if you are looking for a PhD student, if you have any great opportunity that ECOPs might be interested in, just join this group and feel free to post. As the forum is a relatively new place, we are still developing. I think all the groups out there are developing their pages, but it will be a great place to be in and to share information. So please don't forget to register also there and be part of that. And next slide, please. So this is this slide with all the emails and all the websites, all the information about the website, newsletter, all the emails, and our social media. Please follow us on Twitter, on LinkedIn. Again, we are very much welcome to hear from any of you. And if you want to join any of our task teams or regional nodes, please do so. More details, all the details you will find on the website. So thank you so much. It was a pleasure to provide this overview for you, and I'm always happy to answer any questions and answer your emails. Thank you so much, and I hand it over back to Sean. Thank you.
Thank you, Evgenia, and rapturous applause around the world for you as well, I am sure. So thank you for a very comprehensive overview of the ECOP programme. You touched on some of the regional work that's going on within the programme. So this next section of the webinar is to highlight some of the regional work that's going on within the African node, the Asian node, and the Canadian node. So I'm going to introduce all three speakers now, and then we're going to have the first speaker joining us live, and then recorded presentations from the second two. So our first speaker representing the African node is here with us. This is Gabriel Juma, and he is the African node coordinator for the UN Ocean Decade endorsed ECOP program. So Gabriel is a PhD student at the University of Bremen in Germany. He is a coastal marine ecologist with an MSc in environmental science from Chuka University in Kenya, and a postgraduate diploma in observational oceanography from the Alfred Wegener Institute in Germany. So his research interests include blue carbon of mangrove and seagrass ecosystems. He is an ecologist, and he examines carbon assessment and zooplankton ecology. Our second speaker will be representing ECOP Asia. This is Raphael Roman, who has provided a recorded presentation. Raphael originally comes from Switzerland, but has developed a passion for ocean conservation and coastal community well-being through various research and consultancy appointments in Canada and Japan. Based on this experience and his work within other early career networks, Raphael aims to establish and sustain a vibrant, engaged, and inclusive regional ECOP community in Asia. And then finally, a recorded presentation from Neha Acharya Patel, representing ECOP Canada. So Neha is the founder of the ECOP Canada chapter. She is a marine scientist with experience in outreach, project facilitation, and team leadership, as well as being heavily involved with the creation and implementation of the ECOP Canada chapter. So we'll discuss more about that in her recorded presentation. So I'll hand over to Gabriel now, and then we will go straight into the recorded videos from Raphael and Neha. So Gabriel, over to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Asian, for that great introduction. And I'm happy to be here today and to present. So as mentioned, I'm the ECOP regional coordinator for ECOP Africa, and I'm happy to give just a short overview of what we are doing. Much has been mentioned by Evgenia, who is the global coordinator. Next slide. So as mentioned, we just started the ECOP African node, in which understanding that the ocean is connected and also diverse in a way, we started this node to be able to address some of the priorities and needs that will focus more for ACOPS in Africa. So we hope to ensure an inclusive and empowered ACOPS in Africa for sustainable oceans during this decade of ocean science and beyond the decade. And we are going forward to address this by identifying and really looking forward to address the needs and priorities of ACOPS in our region, because there are different policies, capacities, practices, and challenges. And therefore, if we focus more in a given region, for example, in Africa, then we will have more impact. Next slide. So I'll just focus on our strategic objectives or what we hope to achieve in the meantime. One of them being we hope to conduct an inventory of ACOPS and the ACOP networks and the initiatives in the region. Africa is also one of the diverse continents, as we understand, with so many young marine scientists and marine ocean actors. So we want to identify where our ACOPS are in the different countries and sub-regions and some of the initiatives that they are carrying out, so that we could also replicate some of the good projects that they are carrying out in other regions, so that we have holistically sustainable oceans. And then we are also looking into scoping options for development of the node by identifying the needs and priorities. So in this, we are looking forward to conduct an assessment in which we'll ask them on what they really take as their priorities, so that if we have different capacity development support from within the region or outside, then we can tailor these capacity-related activities towards the priorities and needs of our ACOPS. And also, we are establishing links with strategic partners, including national decade committees and the regional task forces and other organizations that could support ACOPS in the region. So we hope to establish these links during the decade and even beyond the decade, so that we have a sustained connection with the current organizations and even those that will be there in future times. And we're also identifying challenges and knowledge gaps for capacity development. So this will vary from one region to another, from different disciplines. But when we understand this, then we can, as I mentioned, tailor our resources and those support that we get towards where we'll have maximum output. And again, we also hope to be the focal point to be able to link to other regions and other organizations, because technologies, methods, they could vary from one region or one node to another. We want to link technologies that are already working in other regions so that we link it and be able to support and get more connections to the ACOPS in Africa. Next slide. So currently, as I mentioned, we're just developing and we're just starting. We hope to really strengthen ACOP Africa within this year and the coming years during this decade. Currently, we have organizations that we are already working with, IOC, UNESCO, and IOC Africa being one of the major organizations. Some of the major organizations that we're working with. Other organizations like WIOMSA, the African Union Commission, and POGO are just coming on board. And our list is not conclusive. We are still looking into getting more organizations on board to be able to partner and support ACOPS in this region. As well, we are identifying different ACOP networks that are currently established in the region so that we work with them. And as was mentioned, we are going to be more or less an umbrella for the different ACOP networks. So we don't want to remove what they're doing or to eliminate the current organizations, but to work with them so that we achieve all the ocean sustainability agenda. So some of the organizations are like Blue Med Ambassadors, the WIOSN Sustainable Ocean Alliance, that is the African chapter, the African Youth Climate Hub, amongst other ACOP networks that we are hoping to work with and to bring on board. Next slide. So upcoming activities and events that we are focusing on just at the start of the year and even into the year. We are currently going to working on a survey that we are going to launch probably by the end of this week that will address the needs, priorities, and challenges. So we will seek to identify that from ACOPs in Africa. And I hope in your different networks, you'll be able to, we'll share the link and you can as well share it. Even if you're not an ACOP in Africa, but if you know someone, then we can still share the link and really have as many responses as possible collected regarding this survey. And then we are also supporting the IOC Africa, like in the planning process for the African Regional UN Decade launch pro-workshop conference that is to take place next week from 24th to 26th. This will be online, and consequently we'll have the African Regional UN Ocean Decade Launch Hybrid Conference that will be in Egypt in May. And during that time, we will have ACOP Africa side event, of which we are into the process of planning for the same. So we really hope to bring on board many ACOPs and to discuss the ways through which we can as well contribute in the sustainable oceans during this UN Decade Ocean. So that is it. That is just a brief summary from the decade, our activities as ACOP Africa and how we can get involved. So as was mentioned, I'm still happy to share our email address, and you can also get all the information in the ACOP website, as was mentioned. Thank you very much. Back to you, Xian.
Hello, everyone. I'm very honored to be given this opportunity to speak with you today at this online workshop. In this presentation, I'm going to introduce you to our regional node in Asia. So the ECOP Asia Group was formally established as a regional node of the Global ECOP program last year in June 2021, at the same time as the virtual Early Career Ocean Professional Day was happening. So it was a 24-hour live stream event that I assume some of you in the audience were able to join. The initial aim of our ECOP Asia Group was really to connect existing networks and sub-networks of multidisciplinary ECOPs across Asia. And so since that day, the ECOP Asia Group has been particularly active at helping to organize seminars and workshops during UN Ocean Decade related events at both the country and the regional level. So a notable example was the UN Ocean Decade Kickoff Conference for the Western Pacific and its adjacent areas, or WESTPAC, which happened a few months ago. Our group was able to submit a proposal, which was subsequently approved, and then we were able to organize an incubator session that was specifically dedicated to ECOPs. So it was on science communication, and we invited later career ocean professionals and various stakeholders to kind of help ECOPs understand how to more effectively communicate with policymakers and the local public, for example. We also have videos and recorded webinars and a lot of and a diversity of material that you can easily access on our website at ecopdecade.org. So I highly encourage you to give it a look and to learn more about what our group has been involved in over the past few months. And so a really big piece of work that the ECOP Asia Group has been submitted last year was the first Pan-Asia survey, which reached out to around 180 respondents that mainly came from 5 countries in South, Southeast, and East Asia. In terms of sector representation, unsurprisingly, most of them were coming from academia. We were also able to target some in marine policy, in education, ocean literacy, from the industry, among others. In terms of the overall level of awareness of the UN Ocean Decade, the audience was pretty well aware of it and its various activities, around 61%, but we still have a non-negligible amount of them who were relatively unaware of what the decade was, what kind of activities were happening around them, and how they can be involved in it. Another important aspect of the survey was for us to be able to identify the needs and the priorities of the ECOPs in Asia in a similar fashion that in the Global ECOP survey, as Guillermo mentioned earlier. So in terms of barriers and constraints in Asia, it's pretty similar. There's 3 big barriers overall, which is the lack of funding, the need for career opportunities and job opportunities, ECOPs being eager to be part of a community and a network in their own discipline, sector, and country. And also in Asia, there's a non-negligible amount of individuals who mention language barrier as a pretty big impediment to be more engaged within the UN Decade and with other partners and researchers. So now I'm going to move to the current action plan of the regional node that will happen in the next few months. It's revolving around 3 main pillars, and I'm going to go through each of them right now. So the first one is really the idea of taking stock of the ECOP landscape in Asia. So kind of identifying where ECOPs are located in Asia, which sector are they belonging to, and what kind of work they're involved in, and what kind of networks they're also part of. So far, we've been able to officially register more than 100 ECOPs. There are many coming from 13 countries, which is highly biased towards East and South Asia. I mean, 75% of members are coming from those 5 particular countries. So we're really looking for more ECOPs coming from, for example, West and Central Asia, where we currently have no one registered, and other countries that you can see depicted in gray on the map. So if you have any particular ECOP that you know of, or if you are an ECOP coming from one of those sub-regions, please reach out to us if you want to be involved. We can add you to our official list. You can just contact us at the address below, asia@ecopdecade.org. And even if you're also coming from the other countries that are colored right now, and you want to be more involved in our regional node, please feel free to send us a message anytime. We'd be more than happy to add as many ECOPs as we can. The second main pillar of our plan is really to establish a network of networks. So we're currently trying to build cross-sector partnerships and to connect with informal and well-established sub-networks of ECOPs. We're specifically trying to be able to better connect with the private sector as well. So if you have any connection, please feel free to connect with us. Some notable organizations that we've been virtually connecting with recently include the East-West Center that has a Southeast Asian Ocean Professional Program, which is an end-to-end project of the Global ECOP program. We also have the Early Career Scientist Network from the Second International Indian Ocean Expedition that focuses on the ocean basin that we've been discussing with recently. And we also have connection that we're trying to build with some other stakeholders in Japan and intergovernmental organizations like Pisces. Finally, the third big pillar for us is to leverage opportunities for ECOPs in Asia, to give them a voice, to share opportunities such as jobs, internship, conferences, symposium, and we've been able to do so via our social media platforms. So we've had those different tweets that we sent out over the past few weeks, and we are really eager to we're really willing to share more of those events with all of you in Asia. So, and if you have an event that you're organizing or something you would like us to advertise, please feel free to reach out to us at the asia@ecopdecade.org address, and we'd be more than happy to spread the word about any events or opportunities you think would be of relevance to ECOPs in Asia. And also, please check the website. Our subsection on Asia also has a lot of different events that we are regularly updating on a weekly basis. So make sure to check that out as well. And finally, again, we'd be more than happy for you to join us in developing and sustaining our regional community in Asia. Everyone is welcome, and from any disciplines, any sectors, any walks of life. Please feel free to contact us at asia@ecopdecade.org. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our ECOP newsletter at ecopdecade.org and to also register with the Global Stakeholder Forum. I'm really looking forward to hearing from many of you in the near future. And I thank you very much for the opportunity to given me to speak at this online workshop. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hello, everyone who's tuning in. It is my pleasure to be speaking with you today. The ECOP Canada chapter was founded early last year and has since gained a lot of momentum because of the clear need for a network like this in Canada. Many of the Canadian chapter mandates and goals echo that of the international program. We want to provide meaningful networking and professional development opportunities, and we want to elevate and strengthen the diverse perspectives of new generations of ocean professionals to higher level tables. However, we also have the largest coastline of any single nation, and we are surrounded by 3 different oceans facing a myriad of challenges. The Canadian chapter goals specifically are to have membership from all of Canada's oceans across a wide range of ocean-related professions, from industry to academia. And we want to build a network of Canadian institutions that support youth and early career engagement with ocean occupations. We are very excited to announce that we will be housed under the Ocean Decade Regional Collaborative Center for the Northeast Pacific, supported by the Tula Foundation. Decade Collaborative Centers serve as regional hubs for support and coordination of Decade activities across their area. So this partnership is great for both of us, as we are both relatively early in our development stages and are therefore able to support each other. We're also excited to announce some upcoming events. First, in collaboration with others, we are facilitating a workshop called Why the Ocean Decade Matters, with ECOPs around the country to raise awareness of the decade. This workshop aims to use ECOPs to design an engaging campaign for other broader ECOPs from a wide variety of backgrounds. Secondly, we are very excited to be part of the One Ocean Festival, which is a massive multi-organizational creation kicking off with Oceans Week in June of 2022 and culminating with the International Marine Protected Area Congress, Impact 5, happening in September. ECOP Canada is contributing through the creation of an ocean literacy toolkit aimed at university level participants, and will also be organizing multiple events throughout the festival. Please stay tuned on the ECOP Decade website. Finally, I would like to acknowledge ECOPS Canada's current partners, the Canadian Ocean Literacy Coalition, Ocean Networks Canada, MEOPAR, Students on Ice, and Apex Canada. We feel very lucky that there are already so many ocean organizations doing meaningful and engaging work. So with that said, ECOP Canada is working hard not to reinvent the wheel in network creation, and rather we want to build bridges between the many Canadian ocean organizations and ECOPs in corresponding fields. So with that said, thank you for allowing me to speak here today. And please stay tuned for the exciting stuff that ECOP Canada will be participating in.
Wow, how very exciting an overview of some of the work that's going on across the different regions of the world. I'm inspired. I think those efforts are fantastic and have much to deliver. So best of luck with all those efforts. So thank you to Gabriel for joining us in person, and to Raphael and Neha for their recorded presentations. Really nice insight into some of the work going on the ground at the regional scale. Okay, so next up in the agenda, we are going to focus on some of the results from the global ECOP survey that was circulated, and this will involve some interactive components. So be ready to get involved. So this part of the session is led by Dr. Guillermo Ortuño Crespo, who is a representative of the ECOP program, also a postdoctoral researcher at the Stockholm Resilience Centre. He's a marine ecologist with a master in ecosystem-based management of marine systems and a doctorate in marine science and conservation from Duke University in the United States. Guillermo specializes in the spatial ecology patterns of the distribution of pelagic species and the fisheries that target them in order to identify areas of high risk and opportunities for sustainable fishing in the open ocean. Guillermo is an active participant in the ongoing High Seas BBNJ, or Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction, negotiations, where he is working to highlight the importance of improving fisheries management in these areas through using more transparent operations and a wider use of spatial management tools in order to reduce bycatch. So Guillermo, the floor is yours. Over to you.
Greetings from Stockholm, and thank you very much for joining us today. My name is Guillermo Ortuño Crespo. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at the Stockholm Resilience Centre and one of the members of the Early Career Ocean Professional Program. In today's short presentation, I wanted to give you a quick snapshot of the results we obtained from the first ever global ECOP survey. At the top of the screen, you will see the definition that we use to capture the demographic group of interest. And below that, you can find the threefold objective, which was to collect information on the perceived research priorities of ECOPS, capacity development priorities across geographies, as well as barriers to ECOP engagement and capacity development. The survey results were collected back in 2020, prior to the ECOP program's official endorsement. And IOC UNESCO gracefully helped the ECOP informal working group in sharing the survey throughout its network. We suspect that our reach would be even greater now that we are an officially endorsed program, and we may pursue subsequent surveys. I wanted to point out from the very get-go that this research will be submitted as a research manuscript to the journal One Earth later this week, and thank every single ECOP who participated in the development of the survey, as well as its subsequent analysis. They all did it in their free time, so I thought that was something worth highlighting in the first slide. So let's dive straight into the results. We obtained responses from over 1,300 ECOPs across 108 different nations and territories. Respondents were predominantly female by 7 percentage points, and the average age of the ECOP respondent was 32 years of age. As you can see on the maps to the left of the screen, we had fairly global coverage in the distribution of our results, although there were some geographic biases that we will go over below. Europe had the most respondents at 405, while Oceania had the lowest at 71. The countries topping the list in terms of responses were the United States, Brazil, and the UK, which together accounted for about 40% of the responses. Throughout the survey, ECOPs were asked to link their area of professional expertise to one of 14 water bodies, which included 7 ocean basins, 6 regional seas, or the high seas. For the purpose of analyzing the results, we took a continental approach to analyzing the capacity development responses, while research priorities were analyzed through semantic analysis at the water body level. We based the bulk of our capacity development results on these 7 questions on the right of your screen. We asked respondents to indicate whether they strongly agreed to strongly disagreed on the relative access to different services that we considered were important for capacity development. These questions range from their access or relative access to funding opportunities to attend conferences or publish or access peer-reviewed literature, or their ability to engage in research in academic institutions in the country where they resided. We then transformed the Likert type questions into an index, a capacity development index, where we were able to find important differences between the responses provided by ECOPs across continents. As you can see on the bottom left of your screen, there is a marked difference between the capacity development index results from continents like the South American or African continents, and those found for Oceania, North America, or Europe, which scored higher. In terms of the questions which resulted in the most similar results, it seems that access to data and information or university degrees was accessible for all those who were able to answer the survey. And we see the largest differences in terms of access to funding to attend conferences or their ability to access trainings in the country where they reside. We conducted some follow-up analysis on our capacity development index by exploring if there were correlations with the UNDP's Human Development Index. On average, we found fairly consistent patterns. Countries with a higher Human Development Index had ECOPs who felt that their capacity development needs were met more fully. This should give the international community some very straightforward guidelines on which countries and regions should be prioritized for supporting ECOP capacity development. Subsequent semantic analysis allowed us to sift through the 1,300 responses and identified more specific areas where capacity development resources could be allocated. Potential first actionable steps include increasing the access to funding for interdisciplinary science, short-term high-impact studies, or long-term data collection efforts. The limited access to funds for attending conferences, training events, and workshops was also a prevalent theme of the responses, which were frequently mentioned together with opportunities for ECOPS to connect with a wider range of stakeholder groups throughout the Ocean Decade. After reading through the 1,344 responses, I can tell you that there is a strong appetite for further connecting with the global community of decision makers. ECOPS' desire was ubiquitous among the respondents and could be potentially addressed by a more prominent presence of ECOPS in national Ocean Decade delegations. We believe that would be a very potent first step. So switching gears to the results for the scientific priorities according to ECOPS, semantic analysis of scientific priorities allowed for the identification of the most prevalent research themes across water body. At a global level and across pretty much every single water body, climate change impacts on ecosystems and the communities they support was the key priority for ECOPS, which we identified through unigrams and bigrams. Climate change also showed to be the top priority in 5 of the 6 ocean outcomes. As you can see in the table to the right, climate change ranked number 1 in the list of top 3 bigram terms per water body, with the exception of the Red Sea and the high seas, and also ranked first at the global level. Other than climate change, in the manuscript, we're able to identify secondary and tertiary research priority areas across water body. I wanted to finish the presentation with some decade calls for action. We believe that global surveys can help provide important information on the perceived research priorities across geographic regions of the next generation of ocean professionals, and also represent a rich source of knowledge to inform where resources could be allocated strategically to support ECOPS more effectively. We all know it takes time and resources for any professional, ECOP or not, to understand the intricacies of multilateral meetings and processes. Being in the room is extremely important, not once, but over time, especially for ECOPS. Therefore, as states build their delegations to attend multilateral meetings, either as part of Ocean Decade engagements or beyond in other multilateral processes, integrating ECOPS is a guaranteed investment to ensure the intergenerational continuity and sustainable development. Stable funding is rarely available for ECOPS across any of the geographic regions we assessed, and many professional networking opportunities tend to be out of reach. Therefore, generating a geographically sensitive funding mechanism, either for conference travel or to cover publication costs, could alleviate some of the most immediate pressures on ECOPS across geographies. Well, thank you very much for your attention, and sincere apologies for the technical difficulties. We are on our way to publishing these results as an open access peer-reviewed manuscript. So hopefully in the coming weeks or months, you'll be able to access the detailed responses that maybe you miss on some of the slides. So before we dive into a discussion section with the broader group later, as you may have gathered from now, we love our surveys as ECOPS. And given the fantastic turnout in this event, we thought we would take this opportunity to share with you a series of questions, multiple choice questions. And I think it's important because I think one of the main roles of the ECOP program, in addition to downloading information from the Ocean Decade down to our community, is to upwell knowledge from all of you to the leadership team in the Ocean Decade. So hopefully you'll find these questions interesting. They pertain to topics of communication, financial support, challenges faced by ECOPS, as well as capacity development, and it might help the leadership team of the ECOP program and the regional nodes adopt future decisions. So with that being said, if the technical team would be so kind of sharing the first question on the screens of the attendees. The question pertains social media, and we are curious to find out more information about how you get your updates about the UN Ocean Decade, so that perhaps we can further tailor our communication strategy. So we'll let this first question, which is a multiple choice, sync for about 30 seconds on your screen before we show the results live. So one of the very exciting developments in the ECOP program last year was that we were able to hire a communications officer. I'm sure she will be particularly keen in what you have to say with this question. Brilliant. So hopefully you can all see the results on your screen. It seems like there's a technical tie between the UN Ocean Decade website as well as Twitter. But closely second, we see that people mouth to mouth in your personal network, that's how a lot of the information is communicated. I think it's particularly important, as Evgenia mentioned, that ECOPS now, finally, we have a website. So hopefully that will be another very useful resource for all of you to understand what opportunities are emerging for ECOPS. So being mindful of time, if the technical team could put up the second question that pertains to financial support. As you know, financial support throughout the decade is a work in progress, and it would be fantastic for you to let us know what financial support you think ECOPS need as a priority. Again, this is a multiple choice, so you could select multiple options, but if you can give us one or two answers, that will help us get the most important areas down. All right, it seems like several topics are quite important. Definitely access to travel support now that the world hopefully will start reopening in 2022 was the top answer. I also saw hardware, the purchase of hardware and software to conduct research wherever it is that you do your work is also an important limitation. So hopefully the Ocean Decade can and its many partners can help support ECOPS, and hopefully in the future the ECOP program will be able to funnel some of those resources through travel grants or through research grants for early career professionals. If we could have the third question up, please, which has to do with challenges. We all face many challenges, especially during these pandemic times, but perhaps you could help us identify which challenges you think are most pervasive for early career ocean professionals as we try to pursue sometimes an inter or transdisciplinary career under the umbrella of the Ocean Decade. If we could have the question out for a little bit longer, that would be fantastic. Thank you. And as Evgenia was able to point out in the first presentation, you will have noticed that the four task teams that are part of the ECOP program are tailored towards some of these challenges. I can tell you that over the past 2.5 years of ECOP program, there's been many ideas of potential task teams. It's a living program, and so we will continue to adapt and generate new programs based on your preference. It seems like difficulties finding jobs and lack of training and mentorship opportunities are the top two. As Evgenia also mentioned, we have been able to put out 3 regional training and mentorship programs in the Caribbean SIDS, the Pacific SIDS, and Africa. So hopefully we'll be able to expand into other regions. And the matchmaking between ECOPS who have expertise and research interests and those who may be able to provide professional opportunities. That is an area of active interest for us. Hopefully the stakeholder forum will serve as a great platform to connect the whole community around the Ocean Decade, and hopefully it'll be a way for ECOPS to connect with potential future job providers. So thank you for that. And we'll dive into the fourth and final question around capacity development. What topics of capacity development training could be a priority for ECOPS? So obviously the Ocean Decade is focused on much more than just scientific research. So we could only put so many answers on the screen, but out of the ones on your screens right now, if you were to attend an online workshop in this age of Zoom, what topic would you like a training session to be focused on if you have to join one just after this call? interesting. We also see a fairly close results. I lost the results on the screen. Thank you very much. It seems like scientific ocean observation, so oceanography, big data, data management, all the way down to how we communicate with society. And that is sort of the heart of ocean literacy and science communication. So how do we communicate ever more complex challenges to a growing population that is more dependent on the ocean, but also how can we acquire those new skill sets? And perhaps I will discuss with the team later, perhaps we can put up these results on the website temporarily, since we now have to dive on to the next part of the agenda. But thank you very much for engaging with us today. Surveys, again, we love surveys, and it is the best way for us to continue adapting to the needs of ECOPS and continue communicating with the broader Ocean Decade community. Back to you, Shan.
Thank you very much, Guillermo, and thank you all for your participation in that part of the webinar. So I noticed there was a question in the chat about the recording and where that would be available. I was going to say that at the end, but to respond to the question now, yes, we are recording the webinar and it will be available through the ECOP website after the session. So you can all relive this fantastic experience or forward it on to friends and colleagues who unfortunately weren't able to make it today. So for the next part of the webinar, we are going to move on to the discussion session. And for this, I would like to welcome back Gabriel, Guillermo, and Evgenia to join the panel. And we are also very fortunate to be joined by Dr. Chelsea Koch for this part. And Chelsea is a consultant for the Marine Policy and Regional Coordination section of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission. Chelsea completed her PhD early last year, studying marine ecology and geochemistry in the Arctic. And since then, she's been working at the Ocean Science Policy Interface in the US. So Chelsea is currently serving as the science officer for the Ocean Decade Coordination Unit. So will join us on the panel in that capacity. So welcome, Chelsea, and welcome back to Guillermo, Gabriel, and Evgenia. So as part of the registration process for this webinar, we asked you to submit questions in advance that you would like to see answered by the panel. So we're going to go through some of the most commonly asked questions. And then if we've got a bit of time at the end, we will take questions from the floor. So please do use the chat function to submit your questions. And I'll ask Rhiannon Jones from the University of Southampton to help me to keep track of those questions. So the first and most common question that we got from the pre-submission was around the highest priority marine and coastal issues worldwide. So I'm going to come to Gabriel to answer this question, if I may. So the question is, what are the highest priority or the most pressing issues in marine and coastal systems? And perhaps you could answer that from the African perspective as well as the worldwide perspective.
Thank you very much, Sian, for that question. Actually, as you've mentioned, it's one question that I cannot be very conclusive in the answer because the ocean in itself is so diverse, and therefore different aspects could really be important for certain regions. And again, certain aspects are mutating with time. But then just to go straight, some of the answers, of course, my fellow panelists can also add on to this. Some of the aspects, number one, I can say marine pollution is still a big issue that is really cutting across. As we understand, there is a lot of coastal development that is going on, given that different countries, different regions are moving towards developmental issues. And again, increase in transport as well contributes a lot to, for example, plastic pollution in the marine sector. We have oil pollution. So this is one aspect that I still consider to be an important issue that needs addressed. And again, invasive species and biodiversity loss, I can also say, is also another aspect that is also really affecting different coasts and marine sectors, marine regions, because we have movement there is increase in transportation, marine transportation. So big ships carry certain, it could be even small organisms, so different species of organisms from one place to another. And this leads to invasion and also environmental change. So we find organisms moving from areas that they could adapt more. And if they find that these regions are more sustainable, they can adapt more than at moments they invade these places. And also marine and coastal hazards is also another factor that is still being pressing in given regions, because given environmental change as well, weather and climate related hazards, increase in temperature, we have the cyclones, we have permafrost thawing and sea level rise. So it's affecting different regions, not only in Africa. And then knowledge and information gap is something that I also feel is an issue, because the oceans are so diverse, and we have got different technologies, different methodologies, and you realize that what is working in one region is, for example, not working in another place, but we need this holistic understanding to be able to conserve our oceans. So working on knowledge sharing and bridging these knowledge gaps is one thing that I feel is important. And again, in that aspect, still, we realize that in one way or another, we could be losing some of the traditional knowledge that we had. So enhancing marine heritage is one thing that we might also want to focus on and consider, to be able to tap traditional knowledge moving forward. So just some of the topics that currently are going on include harnessing blue economy to be able to address some of these challenges, nature-based solution, and also conservation of, for example, blue carbon ecosystem, just as an example. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriel, for a very comprehensive and insightful answer. So the second question that came up again and again and again was really how early career scientists can contribute to the work that the United Nations is doing in this space. So I think the best person to answer this is probably Guillermo. So Guillermo, over to you for how can early career scientists contribute to the work that the United Nations is doing?
Thank you very much for that question, and I will welcome the rest of the panel to address this one. I think it's the most frequent question that I've received ever since I first became engaged with Ocean Decade. It is the trickiest and most important question perhaps for our generation. And I'll do my best to not repeat answers that you typically hear. You have to become the change you want to see. The ECO program did not exist 12 months ago. A few of us, a group of committed ECOPs in their free time, decided we need to change this. The regional nodes that you've heard about today are ECOPs who said, I want a regional node in my continent, I want a regional node in my country. So definitely, if you want to expand the opportunities for ECOPs wherever it is you live, and an opportunity does not exist, now that the ECO program is up and running, reach out to the leadership, reach out to Evgenia, to the other regional nodes to learn about their experience and be the change maker you wanna be. Additionally, I would say it's really important to understand where you fit in the Ocean Decade. You are an individual who, with specific geographic sort of details or metadata, with specific professional interest. The Ocean Decade, you can slice and dice in so many ways. There's 10 Ocean Decade challenges. There's 7 Ocean Decade outcomes. There's emerging programs left and right. So map your interests. Take the time to map your interests onto the Ocean Decade architecture, because it's not, the question of how do I become with the Ocean Decade is too broad. So try to be a little bit more specific. If you're interested in a safe and transparent ocean in the Caribbean region, that will help you connect with the appropriate experts who are leading the charge in that way. So I would say, yeah, have self-initiative. We are doing our best to gather resources for every single ECOP. But as you saw from today's presentation, the more sort of consolidated regional nodes we have, the further we'll be able to get. And that requires more collaboration with all of you. So reach out and become engaged. Hopefully that's a good answer for now.
Thank you, Guillermo. I think in the interests of time, we will move on to the next question, because I think you've covered that very well and very comprehensively. So thank you for that. So for the third highest ranking question, I'd like to come to Chelsea, please. And the question is around how the wider community, so beyond academia, how can the wider community become engaged in the UN Ocean Decade? And in particular, how can we really foster these UN Ocean Decade initiatives beyond academic context in the global south? So I see you've put your microphone on already, so over to you.
Yes, great, thanks. These are really great questions, and I think that there's a lot that's been covered today that highlights what's happening at the regional level and kind of how, what different stakeholders could look like from presentations like Gabriel's and from others working at the regional level. But so I guess I'll give you an answer more from the Ocean Decade coordination level at IOC and what we're trying to do. And so these are really important questions, because this is really the whole idea behind what the Ocean Decade is about, right? So we're trying to break the mold of the business as usual approaches to the way that we conduct and finance ocean science. The Decade Action Framework, which you can read more about on the website or looking at the summary or full implementation plans, it's meant to facilitate an enabling environment where transformative, transdisciplinary, and co-design science involves all stakeholders on the ocean value chain. And so this comes through in the fact that in order to be endorsed as a Decade Action, the submissions need to show that the proposed work will be co-designed, co-produced, and co-delivered with the appropriate stakeholders. So this could include working with local, national, regional policymakers, to marine resource managers, to working directly with the coastal communities, or utilizing citizen scientists, partnering with NGOs or other youth and women's organizations, and working with private industry. There's really endless options here of how we can reach beyond the traditional academic constructs. And when it comes to the geographic distribution and the involvement in the decade, ensuring equal representation and inclusion of the global south is very high priority, particularly with efforts focused on Africa and Pacific small island developing states. And so this is one of the first steps to do this. And the way that we're approaching this from the Decade coordination level is through various monitoring and evaluation processes, where we're ensuring that SIDS and LDCs are not only represented as partners in Decade Actions, but that they're also leading programs, projects, and activities, so the different levels of Decade Actions that exist. And so this is reflected in the current call for Decade Actions, which is open now and closing in about a week and a half or so. And we're soliciting program submissions that are led from these countries. And as noted in some of the other talks today, that we do have regional task forces in place. So there are 7 at the moment. And Gabriel alluded to the work that's happening in Africa with the Africa Regional Kickoff Conference. And there's the pre-conference workshops that are happening next week, and then followed by the actual conference in May. And the Pacific Task Force was established and has translated that program, those efforts into an endorsed regional program. And we've also brought on a regional coordinator at the DCU level, which is going to specifically work with these regional task forces and the regional ECOP nodes to facilitate the submission of Decade Actions. We also have the National Decade Committees. We have 25 of them currently, 20 more under development. And another big role that the Ocean Decade is playing at the Decade Coordination Unit is through resource mobilization efforts. And so we have the Ocean Decade Alliance, which is meant to serve as a matchmaking service, if you will, between philanthropic organizations and eminent partners that are interested in investing in ocean science. And so we're able to help align priorities, focus the mobilizing of resources towards initiatives that help early career professionals. And also another key component of this is stakeholder engagement, which everyone has talked about today. And so the Global Stakeholder Forum is another way that we're really just trying to bring everyone to the table and have a way, an online community to share information, opportunities, and stay connected. And so I think I'll probably leave it at there.
Great, thank you very much. And just a quick note on the timing. I see that formally the time is up, but I have got a couple more questions that I would like to see addressed. And then we have some closing remarks from Dr. Vladimir Ryabinin from the IOC. So for those of you that have to leave right on the dot of past, thank you very much for attending and for participating, and best of luck going forward into the UN decade. For those of you that are able to stay around, fantastic. We'll keep the conversation going for about another 10 minutes. And those of you that need to leave, be sure to catch up on the recording, which will be available through the ECOP website after the session. So with that quick aside note, hopefully most of the participants will be able to stay with us for about the next 10 minutes. So there are two more questions that I'd really like to address. So the first one is for Evgenia, and this is around the role of ECOPs who are involved in interdisciplinary research. So how would these individuals best utilize their skills in ocean science and protecting the marine environment? So when somebody who is a pure marine chemist, for instance, wants to get involved in the ocean decade, there's an obvious route by which to do so, but how is it best for more interdisciplinary early career ocean professionals to become involved?
Thank you, Sean. I think this is really a very interesting question, and I'm happy to address it. So I think really the beauty of the UN Ocean Decade is that it allows for many professions to come in and participate. You don't have to be a marine biologist or oceanographer to participate in the activities. And as Guillermo said, you need to be the change that you want to see. So if you're passionate about the ocean, if you want to contribute to the decade, you can really think of the ways how you can do that through either your official vocation or through your hobby. There are many ways. So, for example, even if we take professions that are seemingly very far away from the ocean, like for example, if you are a photographer, you can start taking pictures. There are photographers who took up underwater photography, and they are a great help to ocean scientists because they are taking pictures of something that ocean scientists normally do not see. They don't just have the chance to see that. And there are projects in the northern seas where people take pictures of the underwater creatures that nobody saw before, and this is an immense help. For example, if you're a journalist and you want to start talking about marine challenges, you can also start doing that and educate, contribute to ocean literacy, contribute to some science communication, and really raise this awareness of marine challenges. If you are an IT specialist, there are so many apps related to ocean problems right now. So if you want to contribute, this is, there are many great ideas out there. There are apps that help you track marine litter on the beach, that help track some invasive species, that help track any marine litter, big garbage on the beach, and you can actually come up with something new, with something great to contribute to the Ocean Decade. So if you take, if you are a sportsman and if you do sailing, or if you do surfing, there are also ways how you can include technology into that, and they just really use any sensors to create data to inform ocean science. So I think the bottom line is to really be inventive and follow your passion and see how what you are doing right now can contribute to the Ocean Decade.
Thank you very
the
much.
For ocean protection. I think there are so many ways, and the Ocean Decade is just a great mechanism for everybody to do so.
Great, thank you very much, and apologies for interrupting you before you had finished. So the final question is about the step before becoming an early career ocean professional. So talking about young people and children, how do we engage this huge audience that covers the whole world in ocean protection and creating the ocean that we want for the future that we need? So I'm going to come to Guillermo to answer this question, and then open up the floor if any of the other panel members would like to provide some input into the answer. So how do we involve more youth and young people from all over the world in ocean protection and ocean professions?
Thank you very much for the question, and I'll be brief to try to open up to other input from the panel. One day we will not be ECOPs, and a new generation will take over. I think being young right now is very challenging. We face many crises, and the way we present that information is critical. We cannot be extremely naively optimistic or too cynical. We need to use the tools that we have, especially ocean literacy, and UNESCO has a fantastic ocean literacy team led by Francesca to communicate to the next generation of young people that it takes a lot of training, it takes passion, it takes commitment, it takes understanding that things are connected, it takes understanding how decisions are made and what type of knowledge goes into it, from scientific knowledge to traditional knowledge. And so just providing a crisp and clear message that a lot needs to happen, and that it is their future that is in their hands is I think we need to strike that balance between optimism, but also realism that it is a lot of work, but that it needs to happen. And I sometimes see posts on social media or Netflix that are, on either side of the spectrum, where everything's fantastic, kumbaya, or the world is about to blow up. And I don't think that's what young people need to hear. I think they are a smart generation. They're more scientifically literate than any other previous generation, and we need to speak to them like adults with solutions and with opportunities.
Great, thank you, Guillermo. Do any other panel members want to input here? If so, just feel free to unmute and start speaking. Or if not, we will move on. Yep, so thank you very much, Guillermo, for that very insightful and inspiring answer. I think we can all recognize that there is huge energy and huge knowledge and huge potential in the generation that precedes the early career ocean professionals. That is, in fact, where we all come from originally. So the importance of harnessing that generation really is paramount. Okay, so we're moving towards the end of the webinar now. So I'm going to introduce a pre-recorded video from Dr. Vladimir Ryebanin, who is the Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, and he's the Assistant Director General of UNESCO. So unfortunately, he couldn't be with us in person today, but he has provided this pre-recorded presentation. So Dr. Ryebanin graduated as a marine engineer, but has since diversified into oceanography, meteorology, climatology, very broad-ranging expert, leading in many major climate, meteorological, and engineering studies. He was previously the scientific senior officer of the World Climate Research Programme at the World Meteorological Organization, and is now, as I said, the Executive Secretary of the IOC. So if the tech team could start the video, please, Dr. Vladimir Ryebanin.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear early career ocean professionals, you are at the end of this hopefully very exciting workshop for the early career ocean professionals organized by DEFRA that was working on obligations of its G7 presidency. I was also asked to give you an inspirational closure. And closure, I think, of such workshop, to me, is actually an opening of some very important things that will happen in the future. So I think in this particular case, let me give you a quite general, holistic view of where we are going. I think with the Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, in which you are now comprising one of the most exciting and the most important programs for the early career ocean professionals for networking, we are not creating only kind of science, infrastructures, scientific knowledge, but we are basically creating a sum of all the ingredients which will change the world, including the ocean. And you are the critically most important part of that, because this is about the future, and you are the future. And I would like to say that the vision that at least I can share with you is the vision of the ocean that is managed on the basis of science. You know, good managers manage people. You know, no. Good people lead people, and managers they basically manage things and resources. So we need to lead, and you will be the leaders of the future. And this future looks to me as follows. So the sustainable ocean planning, sustainable ocean management based on science will have, I would say, a technological component, scientific component, knowledge-based oriented component, in which we will much better know the state of the ocean, what is the future of our actions in the ocean, and also what would be the decisions and policies in which we will work in the ocean. But on top of that, I think what we are going to create, hopefully with your help, if you share that view, is a new, not a religion, but, you know, at least a very serious belief that we can improve the world, that we can really improve how we treat the ocean. And this is about creating more harmonious relations with Mother Nature, including the ocean. You know, this is, I think, very much on top of agenda of United Nations. It is because of that United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres urged humankind to stop suicidal war on Mother Nature. So we are part of that movement that is going to really change the situation. I hope that you will be able to find for yourself a fruitful way forward, not only in just few countries, but in many countries of the world, because all countries of the world depend on the ocean and also interact with the ocean. So I think it will be work and also inspiration for everyone among you. And I really hope that you will create also friendship between yourselves. This, I think, unites good people. And then this is basically an alloy of friendship, professionalism, and good ideas. Also, ocean, if it is scientifically managed and ethically managed, will create a difficult situation for well-being of people. And on top of that, ocean is a common heritage of humankind. In 1967, Ambassador of Malta to United Nations, Arvid Pardo, presented this as a common heritage of mankind. I think the right thing now to say humankind. Because we have to be really balanced, really open to everyone. So in with that, I think the system that we are creating in the ocean, that is based on science, based on ethics, based on predictions, based on also our responsibility for the future, for the life in the ocean, I think will also create an effect for the larger world, not just the ocean, but also how people interact between countries, how countries trust each other, how governments can speak, how peaceful is the future development. So with that, I think creating a program for early career ocean professionals under the decade is not just about the ocean. Like sustainable ocean economy is not about just about money. It's about our future and our beliefs in ethics, in honesty, in fairness, that are also based on intellectual input. So I would like to wish you succeeding in intellectual challenges and growing towards that system of much more harmonious relations between you, yourselves, Mother Nature, and the ocean. I thank you very much. And I hope that you will be inspired by what you have discussed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Dr. Ria Benin there for those closing remarks, and to reiterate the thanks to the main organisers and sponsors of this webinar, the IOC of UNESCO, the ECOP programme, and the United Kingdom government through their Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. So just by way of some closing logistical remarks, we ran out of time in the discussion session, as one should in any good discussion session. I think it could have gone on for several hours. So hopefully we will be able to come together as a community over the course of the Ocean Decade and carry these conversations forward and answer those questions. But as an intermediate in the meantime, the team will be looking at the questions and will be grouping them into themes and providing relevant information through the ECOP website. So do look at that in the coming weeks if your question either today or that you submitted in advance was not answered. And there will be some summary and highlight information in response to those questions. We will also post the recording of this session on the website. So if you'd like to watch it again, then please visit the website for that, or it will, of course, also be available for those who were unable to join us today. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the speakers for their excellent and really energizing contributions to today's webinar. And I'd really like to thank all of the participants for your attendance and engagement. The maximum number of attendees that I saw was 320. It may have been more as I wasn't watching throughout. So that's really fantastic engagement from across the global community. So fantastic to see. And I don't know about you, but I'm excited. I think this is an incredible time for the oceans and those of us that are lucky enough to work in the ocean science, in ocean management, anything to do with this critical component of the Earth system. So I'd like to close by saying thank you again for attending, and really the best of luck going out into the UN Ocean Decade. I wish you all the best in your many and varied roles that you will have over the course of the decade and going forward in really maximizing the outcomes of our efforts and ultimately for improving our understanding, for fostering and for underpinning the ocean that we need for the future that we want. So thank you all for attending, and I look forward to crossing paths with you all over the duration of the UN Decade and far beyond. Thank you very much.